Today is the 17th of June, 2022. Thanks for tuning in to my official YouTube channel. Make sure to subscribe to my official YouTube channel. And in conjunction to that, make sure you go to my website, www.susanmeling.com, which is the same as www.ladydoribell.com. Make sure to look through my journal blog, The Ornery PSA, and subscribe to my official YouTube channel because sometimes I upload videos and I don't always remember to post them on my website. It's one of a few ways to do what's possible to keep up to date as far as that's concerned automatically. So more recently, as to the time frame of 2019 through the time frame of now in 2022, I have been working on a lot of updates regarding my journal blog, The Ornery PSA. In reference to my official YouTube channel, I obviously started that in the year of 2020, and I've authored a few more books, which you can find through my book section on my website, www.susanmeling.com, which is the same as www.ladydoribell.com. So in these updates, there's a whole lot of work that has been required. And so I had a head injury on Palm Sunday in the year of 2000 during basic training. And with that, it has to do with a lot of the updates in the reference to work regarding my having been born and raised in New Jersey and having went through the tri-state area as a child and having been to the Washington, D.C. aquarium in the late 1980s, early 1990s, and the knowledge that there have been problems regarding certain individuals I have known, such as my biological mother, biological father, and biological little sister, regarding the after effects of my head injury. And so that's just been the way it's been. It's no different from when I was in 5th grade or 2nd grade, to be honest, or any other point in time in my life. And so for a real quick understanding, not just 5th grade, when all years prior as well as all years since then, I usually went to a scientific doctor in reference to medical care. In 5th grade, I had mono-Epstein-Barr bronchitis, Lyme's disease, and the flu all at the same time. And my prior official YouTube video for today, the 17th of June, 2022, you can't hide behind religion as much as some might wish, especially when you have a pattern of behavior. So my biological mother had graduated with her bachelor's and master's degree in science, so there's no allowance or leeway in those references to that aspect. Same thing with the technology. Since she had been involved with information technology, that's a huge red flag to anybody who pays attention to well-being. And so in addition to that, when you take a look at what is a common thread, what is a actual pattern of behavior, well, you have these circumstances where I have a pattern of behavior as to when it is through my choice, compared to other factors when there's needless involvement regarding other situations. So my biological mother grew up in a time frame where supposedly feminism was supposedly a thing. And a true feminist would actually be appreciative and proud that there'd be females who could achieve things. and may, yes, in some ways be a little bit envious, but be proud. Wouldn't in a prideful way, though also definitely wouldn't hold another female back in any capacity of, because a true feminist wouldn't do that. A true feminist also would understand that males and females biologically have certain strengths and so on and so forth, and wouldn't put those down in an unequal way. It would be equal across the board regarding feminist. And so in those capacities, my biological mother was born in the 1950s. And so in that time frame, and growing up in the 1960s, well, there's where feminism started in a little bit of a larger way, and so on and so forth. So a true feminist wouldn't ever do anything to a female who was ever making it on her own in a capacity where she was actually bettering, so I dealt with this as a child. So I actually had been in dance, and I didn't want to do dance the way it was normally done. I actually was capable to go on my toes, and I don't mean in reference to on my toes like, some people, I genuinely mean as to point. And so in first grade, I could actually deal with, to a degree, slipping on point shoes, because there were a few that were laying around, and actually correctly put my toes in and actually dance, with the exception of them being a little bit bigger than my feet at that time. And that's just not a normal situation regarding the average bone structure, especially at that age. And so I went into other things that I was okay with, such as gymnastics and swimming, and then martial arts. That's where I really did well, though I had a little bit of a background regarding my Bakung and my Bakpu. And my Bakung and my Bakpu were born and raised in China, and they had escaped Mao Zedong before Tiananmen Square, though Tiananmen Square is only known because of a British photographer who had been there. That was just Tiananmen Square, though. That wasn't other areas in China during that time frame, for those who would know, and or would have individuals that would have informed them of that. So, that was way back when in comparison. So in those references, I suppose it's an irony, because a lot of people in various sectors had not believed me as to how my biological mother and my biological father and my biological little sister were. Some had some experiences. So you have the San Antonio pagan community, and they would know as far as that's concerned. And in reference to Excalibur Fair, my biological mother, her viewpoint was, oh, well, that's what happens there in comparison. And then in regards to what's supposed to be considered the adult consenting lifestyle, well, my biological mother and my biological father know about a picture that I drew when I was a child, and yet somehow were surprised that I was going to those areas not in the same references, which I explained. I did so in the year 2004 and the year 2005 in conjunction to the year of 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012, because I was born and raised in New Jersey in the 1980s and the 1990s. And so I had a head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000 when I was in basic training. And I had a subarachnoid hemorrhage in the frontal lobe of my brain, which had lasted 8.5 years. And so I posted this more so on FetLife than I had on Facebook regarding lifestyle aspects. And yes, in one of my first books, Finding a Silver Lining, yes, I had put that in there in that reference. However, I explained at those times, as well as in person, face-to-face in person, that I was not involved in the BDSM lifestyle or the swinger lifestyle in the same capacities as probably about 99.9999999% of everybody else. I was honest about that. I didn't hide that. And yet I dealt with, as I've described and explained, as well as wrote about. So while some people, as I've explained in reference to prior sermon monologue lectures, as to Old Testament Presbyterian Church members, mainly the youth group, not understanding why I could be into certain types of music, and yet my cousin Jade is half Chinese and half African American. Her mom is my great Aunt Helen, who is the sister to my buck gum. And so my great Aunt Helen was capable to come to the United States of America legally because of my buck poo. That was the only reason. Those who understand certain factors regarding immigration, especially in the legal capacity, and then there are the factors as to because of who my buck poo was, and my grandpa Gavitt and his work, there's training that certain individuals hypothetically have went through that are aspects that my buck poo taught. So while yes, my buck gum did more of the on-land, hand-to-hand aspects, my buck poo took care of the water. And so certain would have yous in whatever ... capacity, that would be training from my buck poo, that you would have a, pun intended, watered down version of, that you would have those backgrounds to. And so in reference to my scuba diving, only people that would actually appreciate the aspects of would be appreciative in the correct capacities. So biological females that would have any problem with that wouldn't be feminists at all. Biological males, obviously in the same capacity. And I did explain, similarly to what's supposed to be considered the consenting adult lifestyle, as to the reasons why I was there. I didn't hide that. There was a point in time at Club Sapphire, and I only remember one time, though I know that there were a couple other times, where there were announcements made. And in this one particular reference, there were two females, if I remember correctly, who were there, who had wanted to ask questions of anybody that was willing to speak with. And I figured, because of the work that I was doing at the time, because of the security situations I was knowing that was needed, if I was actually needed to speak with, well then, you just ask in comparison. That sort of announcement thing doesn't work for someone such as myself. I'm not that type, especially in regards to how the volunteering situations are. I don't do well in that capacity. I won't automatically. And it's just how I am, especially when in those time frames as too. And so while some people might, I just am not that type of a person. It might be considered weird, and that's fine, but that's just how I am. Nonetheless, in a similar capacity to the British photographer as to Tiananmen Square only at that point, there was an individual I had dated in the year of 2012. And he is the only person who had ever heard my biological mother as to how she actually spoke with me, or at me, I should say. And it was at the time frame as to the beginning of the San Antonio family court situation. And so very few people well before then ever believed as to the level of. Now, there are those who later may have found out, especially in New Jersey, to finding out that I was involved in cheerleading. There is no one anywhere in the state of New Jersey, as far as Asher Holmes Elementary School, Marlboro Middle School, Marlboro High School, or St. John Vianney High School, who would ever believe my biological mother if she tried to claim that I wanted to be a cheerleader. There would be people who would argue with her in this hypothetical, and then she would try and she would fail. People in Illinois wouldn't know any better, but people in New Jersey would. And so while my biological mother and biological little sister might try in those capacities to claim certain aspects, no, it's not an after effect of my head injury, it's just the facts. I grew up playing football. That's not cheerleading. Just because there are cheerleaders at traditional football games, I played football with guys just in backyards and stuff. So my biological little sister wouldn't know anything about that because she wasn't one of those. She went to dance. And so I played basketball. Well, usually where I played basketball was the 5 boroughs, because my biological father was doing whatever as far as the School of Bulova work regarding watches and jewelry, and so there's a few basketball courts in certain areas of the 5 boroughs. Street hockey, same thing as the 5 boroughs, though also certain areas of Pittsburgh and Philadelphia, as well as New Jersey, mainly after the subdivision was started. That's where in New Jersey, more so in comparison though to street hockey, though it wasn't really in the street, but it was in the streets as to those who would know that particular factor. Ice hockey would be, well, there are certain areas in the state of New York and Pennsylvania in the winter time that are not ice rinks, though get cold enough to be. And then, so other people wouldn't necessarily know that, and yet they could see that because of how much of a tomboy I was. So in Illinois, they didn't see that because, well, they did to a degree regarding powder puff football when I was upset because it wasn't tackle football. And so the cheerleading squad, ironically, would literally be the only people at that point in time who could think about that and be like, well, she was upset about it being touch football in comparison to tackle football. And, I should clarify, it became touch football after a tackle I did. I'm not saying that I knew how to do certain things in regards to, certain movements, though anybody who would recognize, certain things, there's a certain movement. So it's not a tackle per se. It's technically not a tackle. They had to change it up because I wasn't aggressive at all by technicalities. It's just they didn't expect that. As to any female being capable to do certain things in football, and so and so for those who have played football, most specifically, you take a step forward and you have your arm a certain way and you get your shoulder a certain way, to hypothetically in a situation, you just kind of come up as far, but you kind of, it's kind of a little bit martial artsy-ish, and yet,
And then, you know, after they're out of the way, then you go to the person who has the ball, and, you know, however you get the ball is however you get the ball. They didn't have male cheerleaders, I'm just saying, when that occurred. So, nonetheless, it was as it was. I mean, they had the coaches that were there, and well, then it became where it was not that was allowed, because, you know, for those who remember hockey in the 1980s, the New Jersey Devils were as the New Jersey Devils, and there are certain regulations that got changed in the NHL. You know, like, for example, from the 1970s into the 1980s, you know, you had to keep your gloves on, and you had to keep your helmet on. That was another one. And you had to not throw your stick or raise it a certain height, a certain way. That had a lot to do with the New Jersey Devils. My favorite team, just for clarification regarding hockey. So, you know. I don't know if there's a way to tell I'm a smidgen of a hockey fan of the New Jersey Devils at all. I don't know. However, maybe there's, you know, that's a different, just say, hypothetically, maybe somehow, some way, you know, somebody could tell that I'm a little bit of a New Jersey Devils hockey fan. I don't care what the track record is. It's my home team. Just saying. I don't know if there's anything anywhere about me or my personality possibly at all that could ever in any capacity ever give a hint that I'm a smidgen, teeny tiny bit, just a small amount of a New Jersey Devils hockey fan. I don't know. I don't want to assume. I know that that's not normally discussed by everybody. However, I just a little bit of a fan because of their ways, and so, you know. I'm not saying that I can be aggressive as they can be and have been. What I am saying is I'm a New Jersey Devils hockey fan, and I can still be a fan of the New York Rangers. Yeah. So that, and in the 1980s and 1990s, which that's a different level of stubbornness, for those who would know. Now, my biological mother and my biological little sister, they wouldn't know that until later, and maybe that might make a little bit of sense, especially in reference to a few people, as to a few things, because it takes a different type of person to be a fan of the New Jersey Devils and the New York Rangers. Just as it's a different type of person to be a fan of the New York Mets and the New York Yankees. So, you know, so for those in Texas, that's like being a fan of both the Dallas Mavericks and the San Antonio Spurs. Okay? Like, in a different capacity completely, because hockey is very different. Those sports fans are sports fans, and so that would be the equivalent as close as you could get. Though, remember, for as many that have been like, I know how New Jersey is, This is the 1980s and 1990s in New Jersey. Being all like, yay! So, you gotta have a certain internal strength to be capable to withstand that in the 1980s and 1990s as far as both hockey and baseball. And then, on top of that, a fan of both the New Jersey Jets and the New York Giants. So let me take it to another level of being a fan of the Knicks and the Chicago Bulls on the East Coast, by the way, as well as in Illinois, but just throwing that out there. And for those who were into basketball back in the late 1980s, mainly the 1990s, I have been a fan of the Chicago Bulls. This is another reason why I was very upset. What do you mean we're moving to Crystal Lake? Where is it compared to Chicago? Dennis Rodman and Michael Jordan and like Scottie Pippen are awesome. What do you mean we're moving to Crystal Lake, Illinois? No, I want to move. No, Chicago. Like I'm just, and I'm just saying. Just saying. There could be a sign or two, possibly. I don't know, I don't want to assume, but I didn't really care about, and then really take this in consideration. Okay, so again, the football and the hockey. I like Dennis Rodman. He seems awesome. He seems like an interesting guy, I don't know. He just, I do like Michael Jordan. I really do. He's awesome. Scottie Pippen, he seems quiet but cool. But I don't know what it is. There's something about Dennis Rodman I almost have this sensation of a little bit of a kin to. And maybe there are people who could possibly, without the physical aspects, literally, more so in person, face to face in person, who have known me, who could possibly somehow think about my personality traits. And maybe they could see why I could be a fan of Dennis Rodman. He said, what to who? What? Yes. That is someone, that'd be an interesting elected official. I'm just saying. I'm not saying that he can't be, pretty words or anything, but when it comes to personal opinion, I'm just just throwing that out there. Who do you want negotiating? Making sure stuff happens. I'm just saying. So, it's a personal opinion. Other people have their right to opinions. I'm just saying, So it's just, it's an opinion. So, my biological mother and biological little sister wouldn't ever have any knowledge of, wouldn't even register to them. And so then the irony, because most likely there would be the hypothetical of, oh no, rose-colored glasses. Her life was, picture perfect. And picture, yeah, sure. If you only look at pictures that are specifically arranged in a certain capacity at a certain time in a certain way, and all outfit, clothing, whatever is all in, yeah, sure, yeah. And then there's reality, as far as that's concerned in comparison. And so, an actual feminist would be capable to distinguish those differences in comparison in that hypothetical way. And so, my biological mother had raised my biological little sister to be more in that dance sort of capacity. So, anybody who would have found out that I had been on the cheerleading squad when I was in Illinois at the time, which I did talk with a few people when I was living in Illinois, when, that I knew in New Jersey from St. John Vianney High School. And I promise you that if, for example, Jackie had went and told people in St. John Vianney High School, people would have fallen on the ground laughing. Either that or they would have had to hold themselves up by leaning against the lockers and being like, yeah, okay, yeah, Susan, yeah, no, who made that happen? Yeah, either one of a few things, because, for those who know how things are in New Jersey, okay, so who got paid? Because that's only if somebody got paid, or most likely because there are those who met my biological mother and my biological father, or that was not a choice. That was not a choice at all. So, wow, that wasn't that, because there's nobody that I once knew who would ever believe that at all. And while my biological mother and biological little sister might think that they could convince people that I really wanted to be a cheerleader, there is absolutely no pattern of behavior. For example, so the dance instructor and the dance instructors at the dance school my biological little sister went to were like, no, you can pay for Patricia. Susan's not going to go to this school because she makes the other instructors look bad. And additionally to that, it's illegal for someone in elementary school to dance in point shoes. As far as that's concerned, we cannot legally train her to dance in point shoes, and there is no one in the entire United States of America that would allow that because of health. And so, no, that's not allowed. So, for the example, because it is. And so while in comparison, my biological little sister, she got into point only after we moved to Illinois, not before then, and literally only after we moved to Illinois in comparison. So, there's those particular factors for those who would recognize that. And so I could do that in elementary school. And so, they moved to the state of Texas only after 2002 Christmas, which I told people about as far as Dakota and how that I had to protect my infant daughter, who was just a few months old, from that dog. And then I had to protect my son, who was only a year and a few months old, from that dog. And my biological father had seen my side of it at the time after I had packed everything up to leave, because I refused to be a part of that. I was not willing to put my son or my daughter at risk like that. And I had informed them that I was not ever going to go back because of what they did. And so then they moved to the state of Texas because, where my biological father took my side, my biological mother is my biological mother, and I refused to be a part of that. And so there's those particular factors. So I did everything I could to keep my son and my daughter safe from my biological mother, my biological little sister, and my biological father. And, you know, a bunch of people did the same thing I dealt with when I was a child. Oh, but instead of, oh, you're just a child, I dealt with, oh, well, you had a head injury. That doesn't mean anything at all. That has nothing to do with, yeah, it's a fact that I had a head injury. It doesn't change the facts as to what occurred. That's just the facts. And so, you know, I had to deal with that. And in comparison, I don't know how many reports I have to make because, you know, there are those facts. I already registered everything with the Library of Congress, which officially is an official report. Took things to the FBI offices, sent things to the FBI offices. Like, it's, you know, took things to the San Antonio, Houston address office. Took things directly to Criminal Investigation Division, you know, and that's in the year 2019 and 2020. The Library of Congress was in 2014. So, you know, in comparison, but I dealt with this as a child. And so, you know, now I look as I do. Well, you know, that's a little bit of bigotry if you go off of how I physically look. If you go off of other factors as to community aspects, that's bigotry. It doesn't change what occurred. It still occurred. So that's kind of the problem when it comes to those types of situations. Bigotry wrapped in bigotry is still bigotry. And so any aspects of, that's just the facts. So then there's my scuba diving, where I actually earned 26 scuba diving certifications. And instead, similarly to my books that I was going to author anyways, in comparison to authoring and compiling paperwork for that, in comparison to that, I was going to not only author my books, every one of them, I was also going to have an actual celebration and work on my Medal of Honor art project stuff in my house, in Carrollton, Texas, you know, my choice. But only a feminist would know that. A non-feminist would have problems with that choice. The irony, most feminists, I was told, have to do with the Democrat Party somehow. And so, you know, when you have any proof of any needless problems regarding that, you know, it's one of those, I had everything arranged. However, there were these problems regarding McCoy Elementary School in Carrollton, Texas, in Carrollton Farmers Branch Independent School District. And I went to one Tea Party rally, not a bunch. I didn't go to nearly as many rallies in the year 2020 as I had to that year in 2008. One. Just one. In comparison. So, you know, I talked with one cheerleader at St. John Vianney High School to teach people how to do one cheer, and somehow that turned to my biological mother's MK Ultra view as to somehow she thought I wanted to be a cheerleader in comparison. So again, regarding any discussion, I guarantee there had to be people who laughed and were pissed at the same time because of, and it's just one of those factors. So it's just a reality. It's a fact. And there hasn't been anything that's actually been done in regards of fixing and repairing that for me. You know, yes, I want to make sure other people are taken care of as well. However, that doesn't change the stuff that I have been inconvenienced by in those references. And so while my biological mother and or biological father and or biological little sister might wish to claim that they were inconvenienced, they moved on their own. I did not tell them they had no other option. I didn't stir up any needless problems in their lives. Now, they may have blamed me in reference to Marine and Science Technology School with the Navy attachment And yet, they signed the paperwork for me to go. So it's kind of, stupid, in my opinion, for them to ever, which they did, blame me wrongly. That was their fault. Like a few other situations. For example, I was actually blamed for having mono, Epstein-Barr, bronchitis, Lyme disease, and the flu all at the same time. Yes. To them, that was an inconvenience that I had the nerve to have that. They could have taken me to a hospital, but they wanted to be capable to complain to people, mainly my biological mother and my biological little sister. So my biological little sister could go around Asher Holmes Elementary School complaining, whereas my biological mother could go to work and then have a garbage excuse because of who actually did the work in a lot of capacities to those hypotheticals. And so in those references, there's child labor laws. But my biological mother and biological father registered Democrats. You do the math as far as that's concerned. And so, I wouldn't be surprised in reference to what's supposed to be considered the adult consenting lifestyle if they were to have, in regards of reading certain things, and be like, no, Susan, a cheerleader, or Lady Dory Bell, a cheerleader? What type? Are there shivs in there? Do the cheerleader pom-pom things all of a sudden come out and sort of thing? Like what is this cheerleader aspect to? Sure, her name Lady Dory Bell, but those would be the most appropriate pictures regarding my modeling pictures in comparison. Where it's like, yeah, sure, I'll just climb on top of an airplane. Why not? As long as the airplane wing can handle that, because, and I actually had this discussion with some of the photographers. There's like, well, what is it made out of? It's made, because I need to make sure, it's got, because there's this thing called balsa wood. I don't know if it can handle, and then regarding the motorcycles, well, I don't know. Let me be careful because, I don't want to accidentally, and I got made fun of for this. They thought I was joking around. I was serious. There's truth behind every joke. It's like, yeah, no, I just want to make sure I don't, accidentally, use my stiletto heel, lose balance, and then puncture something regarding that. No. I don't want to break a chain as far as the motorcycle. No. It's somebody else's motorcycle. I gotta be cool. I don't want to hurt, well, it's a machine, but I don't want to mess anything up for whoever has the motorcycle. Yeah, no, because, one trip and fall and I could break the motorcycle metal, Fast forward to the year of 2018 or 2019, maybe 2018. And so my son and I are in the car in Washington State, and I put the car in park. I'm like, hold on a second, handsome. And he's like, where are you going? No, it's okay. And I get out of my car, and we're at a red light, and I go, do you want me to help you with your motorcycle? And because this guy, the motorcycle had tipped over. And he was like, yeah, no. And there were like 2 or 3 other guys that were trying to help this guy. And I'm just like, here you go. Yeah, you have a go. I get back in my car, put the car in drive. The light goes and slowly changes to green. I look over as I accelerate. I look at my son, his just, and I look over and what? And he goes, do you know what you just did? Well, right now I'm driving and I'm breathing. And he's like, you picked up a motorcycle. I asked first. Okay. So I asked before touching the motorcycle if I could touch the motorcycle. And so after I asked, he said yes. And so I picked up the motorcycle for him. What's the problem? You picked up a motorcycle, Mom. Uh-huh. So there's this Mimi of a child. Has this little wagon with a bunch of toys in it. And the Mimi says, I just found all this stuff in my mom's closet. My mom must be a superhero. I could just envision my son kind of thinking, my mom just picked up a motorcycle with one hand, really? And her thing was, well, I asked. Mind you, he had no idea about my scuba diving work at all. None whatsoever. Nor did my daughter. My daughter had no idea. They knew that I went scuba diving and was earning certifications. That's what they knew. So there was only one person to ask, and guess who that one person asked would be. But if you had my biological mother and or my biological father and or my biological sister involved, they would ignore, or biological little sister, same thing. There's only one person to ask, and so if they were MK Ultra, as far as looking at social media, and saw pictures and were like, that blah, because anybody who knows that there would be those particular problems, and no, only one person to ask, just me. Similarly throughout my entire life, if you want to get to know something, don't do a generalized, well, would anybody want to talk about something specific? Just saying. And so if it's not a direct to the point sort of thing, you can do all the, well, if you, and but because all I'm gonna see is, well, there are plenty of people who have different opinions. This will be my internal thoughts, just so you know. And so there's plenty of people who have different experiences, and they have different understandings, and they have different viewpoints. And so, those people can whatever. I'll go over here and do my own stuff, because that's just how I am. It might be weird to whatever, but whatever. I got it. I went from college algebra with trigonometry and calculus to second grade math, so whatever. If you want to know, you got one person to ask. You don't have to do the whole whatever. But if you have I don't know what, but if that's what you're gonna do, I'm gonna go do my own thing. That's fine. I won't ever view something like that as a direct question. I will see that as an indirect question. Or maybe it's because of the word in indirect, I don't know. And so, that would be a non-direct question in comparison to a direct one. So just whatever. But my biological mother and biological little sister did that throughout my childhood and teenage years and biological adult years. My biological father, on the other hand, would be, so what happened? What? This is how it would usually go. My biological father would go, Susan, what did you do? And my response would be, when? Be more specific, because, I will answer questions when they are specific. What do you mean, what did I do? And where, and when and how. What in specific, what do you mean? I was born born and raised in New Jersey. My biological mother and my biological father dealt with a teacher. I can't remember his name, but one who had transferred to St. John Vianney High School from CBA, okay? For those who know who I'm talking about. And they got called in because one day I had been in class and the teacher heard crinkle, 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 crinkle. And, Susan, what are you doing? Opening a peppermint candy. Susan, you can't have peppermint candies in class. So the next day, crinkle, crinkle. It was, in my defense, it was after Halloween. And I knew how things were, because anybody who has had Halloween trick-or-treating, you know how that goes, okay? So, and if you didn't know, yeah, So then, okay, next day, crinkle, crinkle, crinkle. Susan, what? What are you doing? Opening a spearmint candy. What did I tell you yesterday? You said I couldn't have a peppermint candy. This is a spearmint candy. You can't have a peppermint or a spearmint candy in class. Okay, next day, crinkle, crinkle, crinkle. Susan, what are you doing? Opening a Butterfinger? What did I tell you? You said I couldn't have a peppermint candy or spearmint candy. Butterfinger. And then the next day, whichever order it was after that, you know, Milky Way and Snickers. Each day. Well, Friday. You know what? I want to speak with your parents. I want to know what they... Okay. Whatever. You're going to have to deal with them. That's your fault. Yeah, that is. Maybe you'll teach them in a way, but whatever. So, that following Monday, you know, what, is your daughter a lawyer? Was she born as a lawyer? Mike sat there and he's all, I could tell those internal thoughts because I know those internal thoughts. And so he just kind of, for those guys who understand this, whereas my biological mother was like, what do you mean? What did she do? So then the teacher lost it. I told her this, okay? And then I told her this, okay? And then I told her this, and this, and this, and this. My biological mother, did you tell her she couldn't have candy in the class? Or did you go over each individual piece of candy? Because there's a lot of candy. It's a lot of types of candy out there. And so if you don't, you know, you're in high school. You know, if you don't, like, if you don't, that's your fault. We're in New Jersey. Do you know law at all? Was your daughter born as a lawyer? Meanwhile, I'm sitting in the class. You know, I'm right here. Yeah, you could just ask me, but instead, you're asking them. I'm right here. What is wrong with you? You know what? Where did you get your college degree? It's my thoughts enter. Where did you go to college? I want to know. Where did you get your college degree? You know, because I could tell you that I've given lectures and assisted a few guys at a few law schools, but you know, whatever. Since you want to go ask them, that's your fault. Psh. But you know, since you're complaining, you know, I wasn't born as one, technically. I was born as an infant. Internal thoughts. What type of moron are you? Did you go to science class? Did you know that people aren't born as lawyers, they're born as infants? I mean, if you have two lawyers that have a child and they still have an infant when it is born. Do you know this? These are internal thoughts that I, and so you somehow, how, like, where did you go to school? Did you have science class? Did you have biology, anatomy, like physio? Like, do you have any intelligence? You're teaching. Whew. Well, at minimum, it's English, so you know that can't be too harmful, can it? And then there's anyway, so you know, that's kind of another example. So in regards of how my biological little sister had always been, why don't you go ask my older sister what she would do this in church, by the way, okay? Why don't you go ask my older sister what she thinks about this? Literally the equivalent of being right here. Or you could just speak with me and ask me. At that point, my biological little sister goes, tell her I don't wanna. This is at church, mind you. So again, over here, no, Rachel, I don't need you to do that. You need to grow up. And then, I don't want to grow up. I'm a Toys R Us kid. What did you say? I don't want to grow up. I'm a Toys R Us kid. I'm a Toys R Us kid. Okay. To which my response was, you do know we don't go to Toys R Us, don't you? You do know that, right? You do know that. Do you have that cognition to understand that we don't go to Toys R Us? You do know that. Do you know the difference between Kmart and Toys R Us? Her response was, I want to grow up with Toys R Us kid. At church, mind you. Okay. Do you know the difference between Kmart and Toys R Us? Do you know this difference? Her response. I don't want to grow up. I'm a Toys R Us kid. No, Rachel, I don't need you to say anything. Excuse me. Hey, we're going to have a conversation when we get back to the house. To which then she runs over to Anna. Mom, 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 like Cartman from South Park. Mom, 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 no, no, Mom, 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 Susan's being mean to me. Which then in turn translated to, Mike, your daughter is being rude to my daughter, okay? Go take care of your daughter, okay? Oh, that's yeah, that's why I don't. Yeah, don't be jealous. I've told people, don't be jealous. Don't be jealous. There's nothing to be jealous of. So, you know, the inconvenience that I was, you know. So I made jokes in reference to, you know, commercial, you know, $5.95 plus $9.95 shipping and handling, but it's a joke, you know, in regards to, because I could distinguish the difference in comparison to, I want to grow up. I'm a Toys R Us kid. For real quick on that one. house. So I grab her by the back of the shirt, and she's like, what's going on? What's happening? Let's go. I dealt with a conversation in the van because of you. So, you know, I drug her up the stairs. Where did this toy come from? And she goes, Did it come from Toys R Us or did it come from Kmart? I want to grow up with a Toys R Us kid. What about this toy? Did this toy come from Kmart or Toys R Us? Response, I want to grow up with a Toys R Us kid. I'm gonna start breaking your porcelain dolls. No, not my porcelain dolls. Where'd they come from? Sewage. Not Toys R Us. Yeah. Congratulations. Now, don't be stupid. Do not ever have anybody speak with me for you ever again. If you do so, I'ma hurt you. And I'ma hurt you so bad, you won't be capable to undo it. Do I make myself clear? My biological little sister at that point in time, I don't care. Psst, I'll tell Mom on you. I will make it where she won't be capable to assist you. Her response was, don't tell Dad. The same. Don't play. My biological little sister. There's no Toys R Us toys. Our entire childhood. Which is an irony, because I took my son and my daughter to Toys R Us. Which I would guesstimate, you know, some temper tantrums as far as that's concerned. Nonetheless, these needless problems regarding that. So, in reference to my scuba diving, I wasn't ever asked. I made attempts to speak with people. In comparison, what they did was pretty much the equivalent in that regard in comparison. I don't need to speak with Mike or Anna or Patricia regarding the puffer fish to begin with. That's first and foremost. And instead of the civilian recreational scuba divers that claimed that they were instructors and serious about scuba diving, instead they did, well, you know, do you think that's really that important? Yeah, because I'm about life. Yeah, it's a big deal. Well, you know, you could just, you know, contact someone else. That's what I usually dealt with. Instead. Direct and to the point. Instead. I dealt with a bunch of needless drama. From the reference point of June, probably I think it was the 22nd or the 23rd of June, all the way until the time when I went to go to Florida for my Vandenberg scuba dive. I spoke with a multitude of people in regards of scuba diving, even in reference to Florida itself. I spoke with 2 different scuba dive shops in Florida, and instead it was, well, you know, maybe, you know what, you people, they're just, ugh. So when it comes to my biological mother, biological father, and biological little sister, this is all they've ever done. They have absolutely no capability to actually be responsible. They haven't ever actually been held responsible for anything. And I would guesstimate if they ever were to, my biological mother would start crying, which would instantly tell you that she was guilty. Same thing in regards of my biological little sister. Or if she didn't, she would go run off and then be like, well, in comparison. Whereas my biological father would start fighting. He would start yelling, he'd start fighting, and then depending on is however that would go. Instead of telling the truth. Because it would be easier to tell the truth, but then they'd be embarrassed because of the reality. And so, instead of anything in those regards as to what's actually important, well, it is as it is. So similarly, in regards of my scuba diving to when I was in the Army, well, I was 17 years old. My biological mother and my biological father and my biological little sister were not informed of anything other than what I informed them of, which is that I had a head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000. The aspects of, their knowledge at that point was I assisted regarding a female with her hair. There was an issue with the bus ride, the time frame of, and the ID card situation, and that was it. That's all that they were informed of. They didn't know my clearance. They weren't allowed to be informed of my clearance. They weren't informed of the situations regarding, and I've gone over that. Now when I was a medical hold unit, 17 years old, E1, didn't graduate basic training by the official standards. Those individuals were informed that I completed the CCC and COC courses, as well as informed of the mud pit situation. There was a point in time where I had attended an assembly, which they were informed of, as well as to an assembly that I had attended in basic training. So I had an assembly at Fort Sam Houston when I was in medical hold unit. I was with Specialist Watson at the time, not dating, just for clarifications for certain types of people. And so he and I went to this assembly. I don't even remember what it was about. And on the way out, mind you, I was in my BDUs. Okay. My hair was not this, it was my natural hair color. What's in this? 1-star general. So who became Captain Morning regarding the medical hold unit company commander, but whatever, lieutenant next to the general. And sir, I don't know what that is. I don't know. And so he saluted and he's like, may I help you? You're just the first living general I've ever seen in my life. This is awesome. And he goes, what did you just say? You're the first living general. Watson is like, you're so embarrassing. You're so embarrassing. Ever, Watson. And so this 1-star, did you say living general? Yeah, I grew up going to Old Town Presbyterian Church. Yeah. Spent time with George Washington Spirit outside. Yeah. It's private office and private latrine, because Revolutionary War time, that's how that goes. It's out behind the church. Battle of Monmouth on one side. Yeah. So you're the first one I've ever seen. Different uniform, that's cool. Whatever. 1-star general. Morning, which is an irony. Go speak with that, referring to Watson. So Who are you? Oh, hi, I'm Susan, whatever, hi. What unit are you in? Medical hold unit? How many years old are you? Because you look like you're 12. You're not the first person who told me that. Yeah. I'm 17. At that time in 2000. You're how many years old? Yeah, I'm 17 years old. Yeah. Got in the army all by myself. I mean, I had to fight to get in the army, but I got in the army. So, I'm gonna guesstimate after that 1-star general could not get into my military records because maybe that 1-star general just wasn't high ranking enough. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know what rank you'd have to be allowed to get into my military records. But he was just a 1-star general when I was 17 years old and hadn't graduated basic training. Later, like a few years later, there would be a major who would take over a year and a half to be allowed to get like 5 pieces of paper. But this 1-star general at Fort Sam just couldn't, hypothetically. So then when it came time to Captain Beer and the switch over as far as the who was in charge of medical hold unit, Morning was a lieutenant at the time, and then he was upgraded or promoted to captain. And so shortly thereafter, while I was on my Article 15, so why don't you tell me what happened during your head injury? Because he was just a general's aide, so, okay, well, why don't you come over here? And why don't we talk? And why don't you tell me what happened? I did. I told you what happened. So what happened between those, that's like, so you only told me and everybody else that so you remember the airplane, yes. And you remember the bus ride, but it was night time? Yes, it was night time. Yes, it was night time. I don't understand why though, because it should have been the afternoon, and so on and so forth. And so, what can you tell me about? Well, I've already told you what I can tell you. What I can additionally tell you is that there are certain aspects that take certain amount of time before the clearance is allowed to speak about certain things. Okay, so then I was sent over. I had acknowledged that I had been invited to Marine and Science Technology School with the Navy attachment. Well, I go over to the Navy Marine Special Warfare Unit, and there's an Army guy who was a captain rank, and I was just doing the secretary stuff as it was, and so then the XO and the CO are like, hey, come here. What's up? Hi. Whatever. What? Your uniforms are okay. And so, the XO is all like, yeah, well, it's what we do. Okay. So you're a medical hold unit. Mm-hmm. Yep. So why don't you tell me about yourself? And so I explained. So you were invited to where? You went to what? Oh, I didn't get to go to Mass. Some stuff happened that I don't really know why. I got a letter in the mail, and he goes, you got a what? You got a letter in the mail. And he had informed me that you only, if you go to take the essay portion of the test, if after that you go through the interview process, that is for your placement in the school. And so, you know, I explained that and he was just, oh, okay, so you're in the Army and you should be at Annapolis right now. Okay. Awesome. Okay. So you're in what unit? May I call hold unit? Okay. So, and there was no questions in reference to what happened during basic training whatsoever. So then random Marines would walk in. They'd have like the multiple rockets and a few chevrons with the little tank, something another, and little doohickey-mabobs, whatever they're called, I don't know. I wasn't in the Marine Corps in my defense. And so a few guys are just, so I'm sitting in a chair and one guy's all, what? Still 17 years old, by the way. What do you want? I'm whatever rank guy. And you are right there. Yeah. Right here. I can see you. Good. You don't need glasses. Go back to... There are a few situations. The Marines didn't have a problem regarding my, little bit of orneriness and stuff like that at that time. And so we, whatever. And so then I was sent to another area. Well, so what happened to you during basic training? You want to talk about it? Do you have anything you want to say? Wait, how am I supposed to, what? So my issues were with the names of colors, as far as things were concerned, and counting. And I could still read a clock because my biological father was certified by the School of Bulova and worked on Bulova watches, Rolex watches, Movado watches, Seiko watches, really high-end watches. And then those really intricate clocks that, are three-dimensional, that are like houses or whatever, and they have little doohickey-mabobs that make all sorts of annoying noises and stuff like that. There were just an entire wall in an entire room covered floor to ceiling. If you've ever been to my ex-mother-in-law's house, just think of those types of clocks. That's my childhood of hearing those if there wasn't a desk area. And then there's also the grandmother and grandfather clocks. And then there's the other wall that had all the envelopes with, wristwatches or stopwatch or pocket watches or whatever. Just, it's my childhood. Don't be jealous. All those click, 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 sorts of noises. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, just from when I was an infant, to when I was 1, to when I was 2, to when I was 3, all the way until I was 13. Don't be jealous of my childhood. It's nothing to be jealous about. So anyway, Regarding my scuba diving, similarly in reference to basic training, well, what do you want to know? Like, you're gonna have to be more specific. What? Alright, whatever. So, I've been working on updates and stuff, and alright, well, now it's at that time frame where it's, pun intended, I suppose, regarding, well, I guess, what? So I told people about the bleachers, the two different sets of bleachers. And one set of bleachers was the attention, those came out of 10 HUD because of the bouncing of my voice at that point in time. And then the movie question, and it's like, oh yeah, no, I saw Full Metal Jacket. But like, I saw Tora, but that's an irony, right? I can watch G-rated movies like Disney. And then there's Tora. But PG-13 gotta get permission compared to that. And so, don't be jealous of my childhood. And then the 1980s and 1990s, mind you. So, in these references, okay, fine, well, I better do some clarifications because I know how my biological mother is. I know how my biological father is. I know how my biological little sister is. Dealt with that, as I had. And so, they didn't seem to understand. They didn't have the clearance at all. I'm the one and only sponsor, not my dead ex-husband. So a lot of people tried, and throughout the years, technically 2 decades now, because this is 2022. And so, sure, okay, well, whatever. Why does it matter? It's not as though I was believed in quite a few ways. I grew up as a child where I made attempts to explain my going out to the oceanic waters. I even did that in scuba diving, and their opinions were as their opinions were. Same thing in regards to when I was a child, having explained stuff that I dealt with in the backyard. And I dealt with, oh, well, what movie did you watch? Or what book have you been reading? Or, oh, you're just a child with an active imagination, or garbage like that. No, I had a nightmare and I prophesied a time or two, distinctly accurate, more than once, and in major ways. As well as minor ways, but most importantly in major ways. I can't remember, in my childhood, I stopped counting at around 23, maybe 25, for major situations that I had been 100% accurate about. And I still dealt with people who were like, well, are you sure? And it's just one of those, I don't really care to prove myself to you, because you just don't mean that much to me. And so when I would say that to a few people, then they would, what do you mean? Are you saying I don't mean anything that you praise? Then why are you being stupid? I mean, seriously, at that point, it's just one of those, either, this is not a trick. This is not a magic trick. This is, I know some people think of like magic. No, this is not what this is. This is not meant for that at all. This is real. So, yeah, is what it is. Have you heard of certain people who, if I remember correctly, I read a news article or I heard on a news report that President of the United States of America, Barack Obama, or 44, he would consult with a spiritual advisor. Well, that's, I guess, in some ways certain capacities and certain references. And so it was just one of those, okay, that's cool. That was when I was up in Washington State. And I can't remember what year that was. I was working on my Medal of Honor art project stuff at the time, so it was as it was. And so, can't remember which guy I was working on at that time. So there's a few. I only completed over 131 of them in Washington State at the time, between 2014 through 2018, I think. Maybe it was 2017. So, it's a lot of work, and it's not just during that time frame. Some of that stuff takes a little bit longer, for curation or whatever. So it's not like when I drop them off that it's done. I'm still working on it in comparison to what some people might think. It's just that I'm at that point where I'm capable to take them to where they need to go for that capacity. And then, you can contact me and ask me specifically in comparison. And so, I've done what I could, though, because of certain things. It's one of those, well, if you're gonna do science stuff, well, then that's not allowed. So I will take a break because you do science stuff to my Medal of Honor art project pieces. I have a personal problem with that. So I will take a break because it's not meant for that. So if you cause my Medal of Honor art project pieces any problems whatsoever, you actually have to ask me. You don't get to do it your way. That's not an option. If you do so, you're disrespecting my work. And so I don't know who you think, in whatever capacity, I don't know who you think you are. But my work is my work. And so you don't have the right to do that. So I'll just do other stuff because this is, I was invited to Marine and Science Technology School with the Navy attachment, and I have plenty of work that I can work on that is not that. Thank you. Because that's disrespectful. I did tell people about Old Tenet Presbyterian Church and the basement situation. So, fine. that goes to actual appreciation in comparison to being disrespectful to my work. It's been a few situations where, if my work was actually appreciated, you'd ask me, you would not ask anybody else. There is nobody to ask regarding my work. So in reference to 2004, there was a situation. Well, in 1999, I actually had a record of proof, an actual yellow piece of paper regarding a warning ticket in Indiana for 127 miles an hour, and made an attempt to explain to the male that I was dating at that time, which only escalated my need to get to the Army at that point, because I didn't have the luxury of time. I didn't have or a lot of people didn't have the luxury of time. And so it's one of those, I had stuff that I had to take care of. And so while my biological mother, most likely, and my biological little sister, and my biological father didn't ever pay attention to all the signs, well, I have stuff to do. And so when it comes to other situations, well, you just have one person to ask, because you actually have to speak with me. In comparison, I don't do well with being spoken at, as that particular individual from scuba diving would know. And since he had been in the Navy, he would know how big, for example, the Vandenberg would be. And I don't waste time If you choose to waste time when it comes to, like, if you're, because I'm not that type. If you do that sort of stuff, I have plenty of stuff I could be working on in comparison because of my knowledge and my understanding and my comprehension. So it's one of those, either you are grown up enough to ask me, or if you're going to do bureaucracy, I have other stuff to do. I have plenty of work to work on. So if you, like, this is not a Old Tenet Presbyterian Church thing, because if you choose to do, oh, let's have a meeting with the deacons and let's have a meeting with the trustees, I'm not a part of you. Goodbye. This is not up for a discussion or debate amongst you at all, whatsoever. This was not ever for you, just so you know. In the hypothetical up. And so, yeah, sure, those people ironically would know that I have had situations. They've seen where I've spoken with guys in black suits with button-down white shirts, black jackets that match the suit with the black tie and the fedora hat. I dealt with a bunch of these little tattletales that went to Mike and Anna. Oh, Susan speaking with this tattletale of Democrats, and situations of. And it's one of those, no, it's not any of your business. Go away. Like, if you have actual questions, have etiquette and respect, and use your words audibly in a discussion, in person, face to face in person, or submit a formal request to have a discussion. You have had plenty of examples, especially people from New Jersey. You have plenty of, you got one person to ask. That's how that goes. Any other attempt that you make in those trying sorts of ways, this is how this has been for 22 years regarding this. I know how to deal with things. Do not annoy me. Either do it correctly, or I'm going to still go do my other stuff because I don't have time or patience for you. I move much faster because I have training that you don't. Thank you. And so it's not being rude, it's literally, there's just stuff that needs to be taken care of. So either, just don't be dumb. Just don't be dumb. It's pretty simple. Just don't be dumb. And so I've dealt with a bunch of this sort of stuff. I did, for those who know. And so in those references, it's an annoyance, especially having the veteran ID card, having the blue ID card, and other things. Well, I had my house, and everything would have been easiest in that capacity. Instead, I deal with all this other garbage. My son and my daughter and I deal with all this other stuff in comparison to what would be best. And in comparison to every other whatever, instead of the one and only person to speak with, they go through their little bureaucracy stuff in comparison. I don't have time for that. If you have the luxury for the time for that, that's you. That's not everybody else at all. So I've dealt with stuff. It's known that I landed at the bottom of the Gulf of Mexico and surfaced alive every time I was out there. Same thing in reference to out at the Florida Keys. And yes, out from Boca. Well, this is not, if I reach out to you directly, there is no reason for any bureaucracy. Anybody who wants to try to claim that most likely is a politician. I don't have time for politicians. This is why I didn't go certain routes. So if I literally reach out and specifically contact, it's because I know specifically as to those situations. Anybody else that wants to try to get in the way, that's them wanting to do politics stuff in comparison to getting work done. That is just the facts. It's been that way for a while. So I looked through, and there was the YouTube thing where there was Governor Greg Abbott. And yes, I contacted him when he was a lieutenant governor, or a lieutenant Attorney General, Lieutenant Attorney General. And then again in 2019 in reference to stopping by the office at that time. And it's like, if you're going to go through each and every other in comparison, you have one person. And this is not the time to have bureaucracy, political garbage at all, whatsoever. And so I made attempts and attempts and attempts and attempts and attempts and attempts and attempts. And so yes, when I was in Washington State, took care of stuff, went directly to the offices of. And yes, I am grateful for what paperwork I could get. But I also know that in regards of when it comes to my own paperwork, the only way that anybody could have full access to my file, military-wise, well, there's only certain ways when it comes to the technological factors because of all of the hypothetical red flags, because of all sorts of people who made whatever attempts, and there was only one person to speak with the entire time. So, but you also have to have a certain level of clearance. So in that, gray area, well, if I contact you, I'll go directly to you. It's not for politics. That's not that at all. This is directed to the point. This isn't any other capacity of. And so while other people might have whatever opinions they might have, there are guys who have this understanding. I don't know what ... whatever they are, but there are those who have the understanding if someone with a specific background and a specific clearance as far as certain things, and they show up and they're like, hey, we need to talk, it's, sure, within reason as to certain things, however, it's important. It's not for the general consumption. And, I've explained certain things. So in a metaphor, there are pieces of equipment that are not allowed in the general public unless a certain amount of time goes by, and it's about 20 to 25 years. So, okay, I've made attempt after attempt after attempt after attempt, and instead everybody goes and asks everybody else in comparison to the one and only person to ask. And so, sure, okay, fine. Well, yeah, I've already told people in regards of the bleachers the second time in reference to, we were told to put our earplugs in after. And I'd already pointed out these bushes that had popped up and these guys that it was supposed to be a military show regarding certain work that had been progressed in some capacity. And then, which was weird to me because everybody else had their earplugs in. And then I had heard, and this is an Abrams, and then there was something that went overhead above the bleachers, and then there was an explosion, and there was lawn area that went really, really tall in the air. And I don't really have words for that, but the ground and the grass went really tall in the air. And so the next thing I know is I went to sick call twice. Once, and they were for two situations that were pretty much the same. And it was both in reference to my knee. And it was the same sort of thing in comparison to when I was in track and field. There were certain backyard situations, and whatever occurred as far as was what occurred, and the situations went the way the situations went.
And in the first sick call, I was told that I could go into holding, or I could go back to the unit, and well, I was going to graduate. I had work to do. So I, as far as I had my nightmare, so I knew I needed to get to where I needed to get to assist where I could. And then I went another time, and it was essentially the same thing, where they were like, well, you know, you have an issue with your knee or something like that. And it's, yeah, I can't really tell you why. And essentially it was, well, why not? Because you wouldn't believe me if I told you. And so the closest reference I could give is in regards of, it's like a jousting stick that has the pillow poofs on each side, and yet not. And so that's the only way I can explain that. And so in regards of that day, or afternoon realistically, everybody else stayed in their seats. They just sat there, and I looked ahead, and the next thing I know is I was in a new battalion. I had been transferred into a different, or unit, I guess. I don't know what occurred. I just remember that. I know that I saw, if I remember correctly, there was a guy in uniform, and he had fallen down the bleachers, and then everybody else, they collapsed. And I was the only one standing, or sitting at that point. And these guys popped up and they started shooting. And my new battle buddy, her name was Washington, and not the whole unit didn't go to this. It was only half of us who went, so we were split in either halves or thirds. And so when this occurred, when we got back, or when I returned back to the barracks, I got interrogated, or I shouldn't say interrogated, but I was asked, but not asked, for those who know basic training stuff. And I had to give my BDUs over at that point when I got back to the barracks. There were some guys who showed up, and they were surprised I had made it back to the barracks because of the road march or whatever, and I had to go up to the top floor and give them my BDUs and my boots and my socks and everything that I had when I was. They took all that because of whatever sort of situation, and they needed whatever fibers, I think I was told, I needed, and so I did the best that I could, since other people had decided to do things their way instead. And so when I made attempts to speak about it, other people had their opinions in comparison. And so because other people decided to interrupt at the time of, when I made attempts, it went the way it did. And so in comparison, and so since my biological mother and biological little sister and that college garbage and their ignorance in those references, along with my biological father, situations in reference to McCoy Elementary School and Carrollton Farmers Branch Independent School District, and since those civilian recreational scuba divers didn't take things seriously, because if they had actually taken things seriously, they would have followed my commands at that time. However, since I didn't have a scuba dive instructor title or whatever garbage of that, and I didn't graduate basic training, so their viewpoints as far as that was concerned, they knew I was medically retired from the Army, and I told them the truth, and instead they wanted to make whatever choices they had made instead. And those needless problems, because of those types in the civilian sector especially, because the military has to follow certain protocols, but those civilians, as far as that's concerned, which has been a problem for a while. And so, but because my biological mother didn't tell the truth, that's her fault. Since my biological father didn't tell the truth, that's his fault. Since my biological little sister didn't tell the truth, that's her fault. And those are for them to accept accountability as to their own stupidity, because that's their responsibility, along with all other connected facets of, because when I told them it was not their business, as a stereotypical what have you, they thought they had a right to do so. And they didn't pay attention to any of that. Because if they had actually respected the fact that I'm the one and only sponsor in comparison to their ignorance regarding, yeah, sure, I didn't graduate basic training. Okay. That's nice. And then their garbage in reference to 2004, and that over-dramatic garbage in reference to Wilford Hall, as far as my biological mother being that over-dramatic garbage that she's always been, in comparison to actually making the correct choice, because she's always had to be the center of attention because of her feelings, because of whatever triggers in regarding her in comparison to ever being a mature and responsible adult. And so in the same factors as to my biological little sister, in those references, the same thing. And in regards of where I made attempts regarding my biological father, instead of those people being mature, responsible adults and just simply saying, well, I know this person and I can introduce you. No, they wanted to be immature, ignorant, irresponsible individuals. Each and every time, to this day. So there's a difference between a feminist and those garbage types, where they stir up needless drama because of their political crap. They don't pay attention to whose lives they impact because they're too ignorant to ever pay attention. Because if they were to pay attention in the correct capacities, they wouldn't do things the way they have. They would actually make the correct choices. So when they're told what to do, instead of crying and whining and throwing temper tantrums and wishing that bureaucracy was the way to do it, instead, they stir up needless problems. And they don't pay attention to their surroundings, which is an irony regarding my biological father. Because he always went on about that. And no, if he had actually paid attention to the surroundings. So now it's Military City, USA, comparison to San Antonio. And so, because they decided to do things their way, because they wanted to rub elbows with whoever they decided they wanted to rub elbows with in comparison to doing their work. And then their complaints and all that sort of stuff instead of being responsible. So no, I didn't need to return to Illinois because it wasn't of importance in regards to. No, they were not informed in regards of me being in the hospital in 2001 after 9/11. But because my biological mother decided to say she knew apparently an entire floor of people who had been capable to escape. I don't know how she was capable to verify that information, with all those communication towers and all those particular factors. Somehow, in comparison. And so, there's those needless problems regarding that after all those other situations. And so while those types of those people could have actually made the correct choice in comparison to that Hollywood garbage, where, I didn't ask for that. I specifically told them that was not an interest of mine. Back when I was a child, back when I was a teenager, throughout the years. Because it's not up to them to make those decisions. So when 2004 occurred, that was their last chance that they were allowed. What choices they made from that point in time decided 2008.
because they decided instead of being mature and responsible, and they wanted to do the college garbage, I didn't have the time for that. I didn't have the patience for that. And for those who actually appreciate life, they don't either have the time for that. That's just the facts. So, in regards of my scuba diving, well, I could have actually taken care, similar to all that other stuff regarding what was my home. Was is the key word. Was. I wouldn't ever want somebody else painting my house, my colors, my way, at all. No, not at all. I wouldn't need that. Because it wouldn't even be the same anyway. It goes back to, certain people arrange things certain ways for themselves because that's important for them. And when other people decide to think that they know better when they don't, I dealt with this throughout my childhood and my teenage years. Again, there is nobody who would ever believe that I was ever willingly a cheerleader at all. Not who knew me in New Jersey, not one person would ever believe my biological mother or my biological father or my biological little sister, whatever tries to claim in regards of cheerleading. And anybody who would, most likely would be at Old Tenet Presbyterian Church in comparison to anywhere else who actually knew me, personally knew me. Not in that overall, does anybody have anything to, sort of way. No. In a direct way. Not an indirect way or a non-direct way. So while those particular types as to those particular situations and those needless problems that were caused, well, how do you undo the damages at all? Because when you take in consideration time, well, if they hesitated, that's them who wasted time. That's their fault. That's not my fault. That's their fault for hesitating. That's their fault for thinking that I would ever picture perfect wishful thoughts in comparison to who I have always been. And so, yes, there's Irving in 2011. Yeah, there's also my car Zippy that I had, my VW Beetle that I called a bumblebee because it looked like a bumblebee. Yellow, black convertible top, black leather interior. My biological little sister threw a temper tantrum because I had told other people about my car. And, wishful thoughts. Instead. So if she had wanted to be introduced and she had already been told, well, you know what, here's an idea, you're not a child anymore. Or if you want to consider yourself a kid, well, grow up. Because biologically, you're a damn adult at this point. So, as far as that's concerned regarding 2008 and 2009, 2010 and 2011. And so, just keep that in mind. And while some people had whatever opinions they had, as far as that's concerned, well, if you don't ask, I don't have to tell. And when I've already dealt with what is considered humanity at that point. After everything I've already dealt with, and all it has ever taken was someone to actually ask me, not anybody else, ask me with etiquette and respect in comparison to the garbage that I have dealt with. In comparison of the coattail riding garbage. That's not how things go. Not in quite a few references. So the only aspects of you could try to utilize coattail riding, though not really, is my scuba diving. Well, when I went to places such as the Kingdom area and in Austin area, well, you had the luxury to go deeper in those lakes than you would ever go before or after, only because of your allowances to being with me. And that's it. You're not gonna have that safety in the long run when it comes to that if you don't do things a certain way. So then in reference to the Gulf of Mexico, they had the luxury of being allowed to go deeper than they were ever allowed before or since. And that, especially that long term. So then, out from Boca, that was a luxury for other aspect. And then in reference to the Vandenberg, well, that whatever he was allowed to go deeper than he was ever allowed to go before or probably since. That's it. Nothing more though, at all. So while some people might think of whatever they might think of, there's a big difference as to that. So in comparison to what some might wish, no, when it comes to the oceanic waters, that stuff on land does not translate the same whatsoever in regards to what human beings consider as. That's not how that goes. It could be wishful thinking, and that's all that is. Doesn't matter where you were born, it doesn't matter at all. It means nothing. You don't have that option when it comes to. So when it comes to my stuff, it's mine. It's my ocean, my work, all those aspects of. I didn't need, nor want, nor prefer to do modeling at all. And then those problems regarding those types as to those needless situations. I'm not interested in that. I'm not that type of person. I fought against it over and over and over and over and over and over again. It's just one of those, after what, and this is, all you have to do is take in consideration, there were only 3 performances, and that was it. Modeling doesn't count. But in that reference, just consider, after my 3rd performance, there wasn't anything else. I didn't make, once I made that level up as to what I set my goal to, that was the end of it. It was not ever intended for any other factor. So while some people have whatever wishful thoughts, no means no. When I say no, I mean no. That's what that translates to. So where I could have actually, where I preferred, in comparison to those types regarding my biological mother being as ignorant as she had been in regards of that cheerleading crap. No camp had I ever attended for dance or for cheerleading. Not one. No fucking interest in it. Some other people, that's you. That's your choice. That's what you're into. I'm not, though. Respect that. That's kind of how respect goes. So then, in regards of modeling, it was only for what I specifically set out for. Done. It's over. I had my goal, I set it, that's it. The end of it. So in reference to other factors, I have my own stuff to take care of, and I did not invite certain factors on purpose. So in regards of that individual who had heard how my biological mother had spoken on the phone at that point, instead of that individual, okay, fine, I had just brought him back from the dead, whatever, fine. Instead of, common sense, okay, I can give leeway mainly because I had brought him back from the dead. So, okay, there's a little bit of whatever, fine. Nonetheless, instead, that's why you don't hesitate. This is why you don't do any fluffy garbage. This is why you are to be direct with etiquette and respect. When you do other garbage, such as try to dance around and do other whatever in comparison to having common sense. Not interested in that. I'm not interested in reality TV. I'm not interested in any of those capacities at all. It's just the facts. So in regards of what should have occurred instead, well, if people would have taken me seriously at the times of, in comparison to that pop culture garbage, that I wasn't interested in pop culture before, that's just the facts. Pop culture has been part of the problem in regards to actually getting the truth out. They literally have caused that problem. Those types that get into that literally causing those needless problems additionally, while stirring up needless drama on top of it. Instead, personal opinion. So, I handled what I handled. Not that anybody's had the human decency to actually have human decency, in my opinion, because of what I actually consider as human decency. So just as similarly as I've been direct with respect and etiquette, I've dealt with a bunch of passive aggressive, and don't pretend there hasn't been aggressiveness in regards of, but those types as to that sort of stuff, which I haven't ever been interested in. So then there are those capacities as to 2011, after 2009. Well, if you knew about 2009 and you wanted to play needless games, you're a problem for playing needless games. You are not a feminist, because only a feminist wouldn't play needless games when things are serious. Male or female biologically, it doesn't matter. Same thing in regards of 2001, same thing in regards of my Medal of Honor art project, same thing with all of those reports where it's not a news report. It's an actual report, because who is there to actually speak with that could actually have genuine common sense in comparison to the garbage that I was dealing with? Or was it that was too much ignorance? Because, instead of being serious about stuff, it's gossip in comparison to reality. So where it could have actually been assisted decades ago for one situation, a decade and almost 3 years ago now, as far as second situation, going past the what have you, as far as I'll believe that my work actually is important, when I'm actually informed, because every attempt I've actually went to make, in comparison, I deal with a bunch of whiny titty baby temper tantrum little complainers instead of anybody that's been actually mature enough and responsible to actually have the capability to be mature and not in what is considered mature audiences. Unless that's the only capacity you know what maturity is. Because if that's the case, are you a toy you don't want to grow up too? Too bad. Time to grow up. Wake up. As far as that's concerned. So, I've genuinely made attempts. And so when I've contacted directly, well, sure, maybe somebody else might think that they don't have a high enough clearance, or maybe somebody else might think I didn't ask what anybody thought. So if I contact directly, it's one of those, in comparison. But there's that garbage bureaucracy and all those politicians in comparison to not wasting time. So there's the faxes to Irving and Indiana and all that other garbage. So you as in human beings in the year 2022, you have gotten to light years. There's light decades and light centuries and light millenniums for travel speeds. Compared to your linear time. So, in other areas, there's just not that bureaucracy. They just go at a warp speed pace, and what actually needs to be done gets done without hesitation. And instead of temper tantrums and feelings and all that, instead of those types of needless drama, well, it's called needless drama because drama is needless. There's a reason for the saying that the truth is stranger than fiction. And there's also a reason why the term is inconvenient truth. So, it is as it is regarding factors of. I don't remember names from when I was in basic training, except for my second assigned battle buddy, Washington, after the bleachers the second time. I can't do it in a linear way in reference to basic training because a lot occurred. However, if you actually haven't the common sense regarding discussions and or in reference to finding a silver lining. So I wrote about how I was put into ISR, and while some people, whatever, as far as I was concerned, well, there's many reasons why I was capable. One is, yes, I was born and raised in New Jersey in the 1980s and 1990s. That's the truth. Same thing with Pittsburgh and Philadelphia, how I went there, and the 5 boroughs of New York City for a overall kind of Maine sort of thing in comparison to what other aspects of.
what was done when I was in the Army at Medical Hold Unit in ISR, which was when I was still 17 years old, and that 1-star general and his aide was incapable of being allowed access to my paperwork because of requirements. And so, but I was in ISR, and, Colonel Kim, as far as that is concerned, or Lieutenant Colonel Kim, I think it was Colonel though, because I remember the bird, although I have an opinion on that right about now. And if I remember correctly, he was Korean. And the other individual, E5, E6, E7, I can't remember what last name started TE something another. And they were surprised that I could handle assisting with an autopsy. So I told them that I was in Medical Hold Unit, and I told them about the bleachers. Unless people didn't have common sense all this time. So, thanks for tuning in to my official YouTube channel. Make sure to subscribe to my official YouTube channel and like my official YouTube videos. Make sure to go to my website, www.susanmealing.com, which is the same as www.ladydorybell.com. And it is as it is. So I have dealt with it because it is what it is. I also know better about etiquette and respect, apparently. And so while maybe for males certain things work, not for me. And those references. So, those types that do that needless garbage, well, what pop culture do you have that reference for? Which is funny because there's that Bumblebee movie, and there's this female who just, yeah, it is as it is as far as that's concerned regarding those particular factors, and so, the one that puts sneakers on and then when she has to puts heels on, as far as that's concerned. It's to an irony regarding a situation in Club Sapphire, as far as that's concerned, whatever legal documentation of. And so, those references to those situations, what actual etiquette is. Comparison. Respect. That aspect. Stuff like that. Just because you can touch a computer screen or a tablet screen or a phone screen, in person, face to face in person, not the same. You don't have that right, just for that clarification. And so, I've made the choice to actually do the updating and taking care of stuff regarding the journal blog aspects on my website, www.susanmealing.com, which is the same as www.ladydorybell.com. And so if other people haven't taken things seriously because of what it actually requires to take things seriously in comparison, well, that's on everybody else in comparison. So where I've actually been serious this whole time, if such examples as to my biological mother and or my biological father and or my biological little sister and or whatever wedding of abominations as to those particular factors in comparison to actually, not being ignorant in those factors instead. Same thing to my ex-in-laws regarding that, not being ignorant in those references. That'd be great. That'd be awesome to actually not have to deal with those types being ignorant that way. So, what was comfort for me, and had everything prepared, everything. I didn't really need other people to get involved back in 2009, except for to answer my questions and do as I told them to. Instead, I dealt with the needless problems regarding McCoy Elementary School and the needless problems regarding Carrollton Farmers Branch Independent School District and the needless problems regarding the DFW area and the needless problems regarding the Austin area and the needless problems regarding the San Antonio area and the needless problems regarding the state of Texas area. And then how my son and I wound up in Washington State. And instead of people having common sense, human decency, maturity, responsibility, humanity, and so on and so forth, I dealt with what I dealt with instead. So, irony of in Portland, Oregon, there was an individual who dressed up as Marvin the Martian. That particular picture regarding my son and I with Marvin the Martian, and some individual dressed up as. Don't know who it was at all. And so, in the irony of who had been holding the camera phone at that point in time when I was there, instead, though, I didn't have to deal with so many immature individuals, those references, I had warned Steve about these trifling whore types, as far as how those trifling whores and those references to Temple of Flesh, as to how those trifling whores had been in regards of various technological pieces. And so, those trifling whore types, as far as in comparison to having any human decency, because of those trifling whore types, my opinion, of course, because if you're not a trifling whore, you know how to actually have etiquette and respect instead of being a trifling whore. And so if you're actually not a trifling whore, you actually know how to do things with etiquette, respect, maturity, and common sense. And if you don't know, then a trifling whore will just be a trifling whore, and someone who's not a trifling whore will actually ask with etiquette and respect instead of stupidity. Because that's what trifling whores do. My opinion, though, instead. So, why waste my time taking any pictures or videos when all I've dealt with is a bunch of trifling whores in regards to a few factors? Because I was going to work on stuff, but since there were a bunch of trifling whores in different references, my opinion, of course, instead I dealt with a bunch of trifling whores, and I don't have any patience for those types. So, that's my personal opinion, though. And so that's why I haven't wasted my time, because I've already asked in person, face-to-face in person, using words. I have described things, and in those aspects, so I have however many journal blogs regarding the ornery PSA on my website, www.susanmeling.com, which is the same as www.ladydorybell.com, where, there's the aspect of direct contact. You know, if you have etiquette and respect and common sense and comparison. And, you know, those similarly regarding my journal blog, you know, social media posts, well, those weren't news reports. So, you know, back then in the years of 2009, most specifically through 2012, each and every time I posted, unlike apparently what other people may have thought, I guess it's because of that MK Ultra word in the news feed, instead of actual, you know, because like Fox News is a news station, and MSNBC, that's a news station, and NBC, that has news, and CNN, that has news. You know, I don't know if other people couldn't put that together as far as I was concerned. So, where I was literally posting and hoping there'd actually be actual assistance for my son, my daughter, and I in the correct way instead of what was occurring, well, I don't know at this point because, well, what is there to hope for anymore at this point regarding what I've dealt with? You know, I've worked as much as I have, not for others. Some might have thought otherwise. I haven't been paid for that work at all. And so I also haven't had the correct or proper recognition in the capacities of, but then again, that requires being asked, comparison. And so if individuals didn't think about that and instead, you know, conspired amongst themselves because the way my biological trifling mother would be, and my biological little sister is to that trifling aspect, and those particular connections thereof as to my ex-trifling in-laws regarding quite a few, you know, because you just actually have common sense, comparison. But if you are not accustomed to having common sense, well, I personally didn't realize that was such a superpower as I had said. I was only joking. And so, yeah, it is as it is, you know, those types. And then there's those problems regarding the neighbors and, oh, I had been in the news and, ooh, NPR, as far as that's, but see, there's that again, comparison. I personally wasn't on NPR, but those types of those people, that MK Ultra stuff, it'll get you, apparently. And so, so I went and took care of things myself, and well, it's kind of irony. With other aspects, you have the knowledge of a form, and in other references, is it because, so I was listening to Greg Gutfeld the other day, and he had a video clip for Fox News. And so in this video clip, he tells his listeners to do something regarding the computer screen. I just listened and watched. I didn't ever really think to see, not that my common sense was that people wouldn't actually do that.
because of knowing that it's whatever they're watching or listening to. And so if it's a situation where human beings actually, scratched the computer screen to sniff it regarding the computer screen or whatever they were watching it on, that is a very primitive situation. That would be that would be a I don't even have words for that. If more than 10 people actually did that, like without hesitation. I thought his name was Greg Gutfeld, not Simon. Then again, I like Simon from American Idol. So, he's a smidgen ornery. Just saying, he's kind of, he had nonetheless, I don't even really know how to process that if people actually did that. In truth, then that's kind of a different situation as to what levels that I had warned since the 1990s more specifically. And so I made suggestions in my journal blog, The Ornery PSA, on my website, www.susanmealing.com, regarding the educational factors. That's kind of important, especially now thinking about that. So yeah. I'm gonna have to process that one. If that was something that actually was done, that people actually didn't know that it was a computer screen that he was, or tablet or whatever was watching on, regarding that. That's different. So go to my website, www.susanmealing.com, which is the same. It's www.ladydorybell.com. Subscribe to my official YouTube channel and share the link to my official YouTube channel videos. Subscribe, and if you're going to leave a comment, make sure to have etiquette and respect. I mean, unless it's that much of a, I don't even know, regarding a few factors. So, woo, 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 that is, woo, 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 that is, woo, woo, woo. Yeah, so that general, when I was 17 years old, and his aide was
promoted to a captain. You know, I guesstimate they just didn't have the access to my military records. And then there's the Air Force situation regarding that after convalescent leave, all that. See why it's important for those 10 commandments? Such simple rules. So simple. So important too. So, so I didn't hide that. And honesty, best policy. So today is the 19th now of June 2022. And so, yeah, those factors of just I suppose some people probably didn't really think in the long term. Maybe there's a situation in reference to the biblical texts regarding an apple, hypothetically. Oh, I apologize. It's the 18th of June, 2022. I misread it as far as Saturday. I guess I was looking at Friday. A little ahead of time, I suppose. Maybe I'm just a little accustomed to that here and there. You have a good day.